there, and welcome back to my channel. If you are just getting started with sugar flowers, or maybe you're looking to upgrade your kit, I'm going to show you my favorite tools, equipment, ingredients, and cutters in order for you to get started. I'm also going to recommend 6 free tutorials for beginners so you can get comfortable with gum paste before you decide to invest in any workshops or courses. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel before we get to the video, and also check out the description box below for every link that I'm going to talk about today. It's going to be a lot. Okay, let's get started. Let's go over tools first. Number 1 is this Ateco tool set. And my favorite item in here is the Dresden tool, but I found uses for all of the tools in this set at one time or another. I find it to be one of the best value pack sets that you can get, so I highly recommend it. Next is your ball tool. This is something you're gonna use for almost every single flower and leaf. I recommend metal because it's gonna give you a much smoother finish than plastic, which can snag the edges of your flowers a little bit. But if you've watched a tutorial or 2 of mine, you know that I love a metal ball tool. Number 3 is a veining tool. You guys know how much I love this. I mean, I cannot recommend it enough. I use it for hydrangeas, spray roses, carnations, the list goes on. This is such a valuable tool. I have so many of them just in case they break. Emergency backup always. So definitely recommend this when you're just starting out. Number 4 is a small pair of scissors. I think these are just like kind of cuticle scissors, but they are really useful if you're making pulled petals, like those tiny little flowers. You can snip all the petals apart. You can use these for so many different things, for trimming up edges if they're uneven. Highly recommend a pair of cuticle scissors or small scissors. Next is a groove board. If you're planning on making any wired petals, you're going to want one of these groove boards, especially when you're just starting out. It's going to make your life a lot easier. You can roll the gum paste right into the grooves, and then you can insert your wires as soon as you remove the gum paste. Foam mats are the next thing we're talking about, and I could not live without these either. I use mostly the white one because I don't make a ton of small flowers, but if you're gonna make small flowers, you can just stick the back part in there and work on the petals on the outside. But this comes in a set of 2, so I highly recommend getting this one. And it's the perfect kind of firmness for you to roll and thin out all of your petals, and I also use it for veining my petals as well. Next up, a mini rolling pin, and you're gonna use this for every single flower that's gonna be a rolled flower. So just get a high quality one once. I've had this for like 9 years and it's still in great shape. So yeah, just invest in one good one and you'll be good to go. Next up is needle nose pliers. These are going to be useful for cutting all of your wires if you're making wired petals. If you're making wired flowers at all, you're gonna want something in order to cut those wires safely and easily. Also, the needle nose is great for hooking wires or doing like kind of detailed work if you need to bend those wires. I'm gonna recommend getting a silicone mat to roll your gum paste on, and it's also great for your cutters because when you press down on the metal cutters, they won't be damaged from a hard surface. This is optional, but I have a drying rack, which is super useful, especially if you're making a bunch of flowers that need to be dried upside down. My trusty pasta attachment is next, and I love this so much. I probably need to get a new one because I've used this one to death, but it's so amazing for rolling out your gum paste super thin. I usually roll my gum paste out to 5 on this machine, which is just less than ½ a millimeter thick, and that would take forever if you did it by hand. So if you're gonna make a lot of petals, invest in one of these guys. Next thing you're gonna need is some wires. So I have these basic sizes, which are 18, 22, 24, and 26. This is basically gonna cover all of the main flowers that you're gonna need to make. 18 is gonna be for any large flowers like roses, peonies, etc. Anything a little bit heavier. 22 is for medium-sized flowers like spray roses or anything in that general size. And then 24 and 26 is gonna be for individual petals and also for leaves. So if you have all of those sizes, you're really good to get started, and then you can invest in other wires as you go. Next up is an X-Acto blade. So I have a couple X-Acto blades, and I have also refills for X-Acto blades because I go through them fairly quickly. I use these for any detailed work, including like cutting out little petals. I cut fondant with this as well. anything that I need a super sharp blade, I use an X-Acto knife. And in that same vein, what I'm gonna recommend you get is a self-healing mat. I've had this one forever, and you basically just use it as a cutting surface for whenever you're using a sharp knife or X-Acto blade, so you don't dull your knife by scratching into a hard surface or ruin your table. Those are all of the tools I recommend. Next, we're gonna go on to cutters, but tell me in the comments below if there's anything that you could not live without that I haven't listed here. Next, we'll move on to the cutters that I recommend when you are just starting out. So the first set of cutters that I'm gonna recommend is a set of 5-petal cutters. You can use these for so many different flowers. I've used them for ranunculus, spray roses, carnations, and the list goes on. I highly recommend getting a set of these. It's gonna save you time from cutting out tiny individual petals. And I love a cutter that can be used for a multitude of different flowers, not just one. Next is a multi-purpose leaf veiner. So I have this one here and it has really nice deep grooves. I recommend getting something like this, and you can use this for so many different leaves. I use it for eucalyptus, rose leaves. Even if you just need to add a tiny bit of texture, you can just change the amount of pressure that you're using on it. The next thing I'm gonna recommend is a teardrop set of cutters, and I use these for so many different flowers. I can't even tell you. I've used them for roses, David Austin roses, peonies, the outer petals of ranunculus. You'll get so much use out of these cutters. I even use them for rose leaves if you just flip it upside down. The next set I'm gonna recommend is a dahlia cutter, and you might think, that's strange. We don't have to make dahlias that often, but what you can do with these cutters is actually use them as an elongated leaf as well. And so I use these for my Italian ruscus. You can use it for olive leaves. You can use it for any kind of elongated shape, and then of course dahlias as well, or any petals that are a bit slimmer, kind of like a sunflower or a daisy. And finally, I'm gonna recommend you get a set of calyx cutters. I would just get like a small, medium, large. You don't need too many. It's just to finish up your flowers on the base, just in case anybody will be seeing the back. That is all for cutters, but do tell me if there's anything that I'm missing that you would add to your must-have set of cutters for beginners. Next, we're moving on to just a few ingredients that you're gonna need to make gum paste. I'm gonna explain them to you, and then we are going to go into recommended tutorials. I'm not gonna go over all of the ingredients you'll need to make gum paste, but I'm going to go over the more kind of obscure ingredients that you'll need. So first, I wanna mention that you should get a bottle with a brush inside. This is gonna be really helpful. So you can make your gum glue and just store it in the fridge so you don't have to keep making it every time you want to make flowers. But now onto the actual ingredients. This is Tylose powder, and it's most commonly known as CMC or Tylose. It has other names, like branded names as well. But this is the most common ingredient that I would say is in North American gum paste at least. And it is going to be the gum that kind of holds together your gum paste and also allows it to dry. Sometimes you'll hear it added to fondant in order to make kind of a harder fondant that's almost like quasi gum paste fondant, but it is very common in gum paste recipes. Next up is meringue powder. So I use meringue powder instead of fresh egg whites or pasteurized egg whites in my gum paste. However, there is a substitution in the gum paste recipe that I give where you just replace 30 grams of water with 30 grams of fresh egg whites if you cannot find meringue powder. So that's an option. I just keep the meringue powder around because it's easier to store dry ingredients than wet. And the final, more obscure ingredient is tragacanth gum or gum tragacanth. I know a lot of places in the world this is really hard to get, so that is why I have substitutions in my gum paste recipe for just using the CMC or Tylose powder. But I do really like the texture that gum tragacanth gives to gum paste. For me, it feels a lot more intuitive to work with, and it has a much nicer texture to work with and manipulate than a gum paste with just CMC. However, it can be totally done, and if you can't find it or if it's just an exorbitant amount of money, don't worry about it. Just use 2.75 teaspoons of CMC in my gum paste recipe, and that should be enough for one batch. But you may need to adjust. Different brands are different strengths, i.e. Wilton is very, very strong, so I would even cut that in half and then adjust after that. I don't know. Wilton, I don't know what you're doing with your CMC, but it seems to be not working in my recipe. That is everything for Gumpaste Ingredients at the moment. I'm gonna recommend 6 different tutorials in order for you to start out making gum paste, or maybe you've started flowers already, but you're just not feeling quite comfortable with it. These 6 tutorials will help you grow your confidence. Starting out with a Stephanotis flower. So these are very tiny white flowers, often used as filler flowers in wedding bouquets, and I often use them in my sugar flower arrangements as well. It's a great beginner tutorial because it is a pulled flower, so you don't need quite as many tools. I think you can do that one pretty much just with some small scissors and your Ateco set. But that one's also great because you don't have to color your gum paste. It's just a small flower to get a little bit more comfortable with the texture and the speed at which you need to work with gum paste. Tutorial number 2 is lilacs. I recommend this one for beginners because it is another pulled flower, similar to Stephanotis, but you're gonna start using a few more tools so you can get comfortable with manipulating the petals in a slightly different way. Also, this one includes color, so you're gonna be coloring your gum paste. You're also gonna be dusting the flower afterwards, and that is a great starting point for moving on to larger flowers. Number 3 is hydrangeas. So I found that my hydrangeas are a little tricky when you're just starting out, but with that said, I think it's a great challenge to really get used to the texture of working with gum paste and also getting used to manipulating it with your fingers, and your first introduction also to rolled petals. So overall, I think it's a good challenge and it's going to give you a real taste of what it's like making sugar flowers. 4th is spray roses. So like the hydrangea, you're going to be thinning out the edges. You're also going to be using your veining tool. The only difference is you're going to be building out more petals. So that is definitely more of a challenge. You're also going to be using a toothpick to roll the edges backwards. And it does require quite a bit of like a technical skill, and it's a lot more fine work. So that's gonna be a great technique for you to take on to other flowers afterwards. The final 2 tutorials are leaf tutorials. So number 1 is Italian ruscus, and I really enjoy using Italian ruscus on a ton of different cakes. You can probably see it on some cakes behind me here, but they are really versatile leaves, and you can do them in light green, dark green. You can even do them in white or gold, depending on the theme of the cake. It's just a really versatile leaf, and I think you'll find a lot of uses for it while you are arranging your flowers. And finally, a rose leaf. Roses are probably the most common flower that we use on wedding cakes and elegant kind of cakes, so having a rose leaf in your back pocket is essential. My tutorial is super easy and quick. You can really make a bunch of these at once. And it's also a great foray into using silicone veiners, which you can build a collection of afterwards, but they are very expensive. So that's why I only recommend one when you're just starting out. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to be putting out a lot more beginner content in the coming months, and I have some really exciting new kind of workshops and courses coming, so make sure you're signed up for that in the description box below. Let me know in the comments below if there's anything that I missed that you couldn't live without in your beginner or your kind of essential toolkit. I would love to hear your thoughts on all of the tools that I chose. Thanks again for watching, and check out the description box below for all the links, and I'll see you next time.